I turned 89 last month, and for the first time in decades, I allowed myself to cry over something I can never get back. My name is Margaret, and what I'm about to tell you isn't a regret exactly, though it lives in that same quiet corner of the heart. It's about a question I never asked myself when it mattered most, and how that silence shaped everything that came after. I've been thinking about this because my granddaughter turned 40 last week. I watched her at her birthday dinner, surrounded by her children and her husband, and I saw something in her eyes I recognized immediately. That specific exhaustion that comes from loving people so completely that you forget to wonder if you're still inside your own life. She smiled through the whole evening, made sure everyone had enough to eat, cleared the plates before anyone could offer to help. And when her husband asked if she was happy, she said, of course she was happy, in that voice we use when we need the question to go away. I didn't say anything to her that night. I'm not sure I have the right to, even now. But I'd been carrying this feeling ever since, this need to speak something out loud that I've kept pressed down for 50 years. Because at 40, I was her. And at 40, there was a question forming in the back of my mind, a question I was too afraid to let become words. Before I go any further, let me say this quietly, the way I would if we were sitting together at the kitchen table. If these words feel familiar to you, if something in them touches a place you don't often speak about, please subscribe to this channel and press the little bell. There will be many stories here from people my age, stories we carried for a long time before we learned how to tell them. So you won't miss a single important story. Sometimes hearing someone else's life helps us recognize our own. I got married when I was 22. Robert was a good man. Everyone said so, and they were right. He worked hard. He didn't drink. He came home every evening, sat in his chair and read the paper while I made dinner. We had 3 children by the time I was 30, Sarah, Michael, and then Thomas, who came as a surprise when I thought we were finished. I loved them with a fierceness that still takes my breath away when I think about those early years. The weight of Michael as a baby against my chest, Sarah's hand in mine, walking to school, the way Thomas would fall asleep with his cheek pressed against my shoulder. But somewhere in the middle of all that love, I started to disappear. Not all at once. It happened so slowly, I didn't notice it was happening. I stopped finishing my sentences when Robert interrupted me. I stopped buying the books I wanted to read because there was always something the house needed more. I stopped meeting my friend Catherine for coffee because the timing never worked with the children's schedules. And then one day I realized we hadn't spoken in 2 years and I didn't know how to call her anymore. At 40, I was standing in my kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon, folding the same dish towel I'd folded 1,000 times before, and I felt something crack open inside me. Not break, exactly, more like a door I'd kept locked, suddenly swinging loose. and behind that door was a question. And the question terrified me so much that I folded the towel twice more, put it away, and never let myself think about it again. I kept myself busy after that. I volunteered at the church. I took care of my mother when she got sick. I made sure my children had everything they needed for college, helped them move into apartments, showed up with groceries and casseroles when they needed me. Robert retired and we travelled a little, saw the Grand Canyon, spent a week in Florida. People would ask if I was enjoying retirement, and I'd say yes. It's wonderful to have the time. And I meant it, in the way you mean things that aren't quite lies, but aren't quite true either. My children grew up and had children of their own. I became the grandmother who always had cookies, who never said no to babysitting, who showed up to every recital, every game, every birthday party. I was good at it. I knew how to make people feel loved. I'd been practicing my whole life. But there were moments, brief and sharp, when I'd catch my reflection in a window or a mirror and not recognize the woman looking back. She seemed tired. She seemed like she'd been holding her breath for decades. Robert died 6 years ago. A heart attack in the garden on a Sunday morning. He was 79 and I was 83. And suddenly I was alone, in a way I'd never been alone before. The house was so quiet. I'd spent 60 years filling that house with noise and care and the needs of other people. And now there was just me and the silence. And all this time I didn't know what to do with. The first few months I kept busy the way I always had. I cleaned, I organised closets. I cooked full meals, ate a quarter of them, and threw the rest away. My children called, visited, worried about me, and I told them I was fine, I was managing, because that's what I'd always told them. But at night, lying in the bed I'd shared with Robert for 60 years, I felt that old door swinging open again. The question was still there, waiting, and this time I was too tired to push it away. It started small. I began taking walks in the morning, longer than I needed to, just to be outside and moving. I went to the library and checked out books I'd wanted to read when I was 30. I called Catherine, who I'd lost touch with so many years ago. We met for coffee and talked for 3 hours, like no time had passed at all. She told me she'd gotten divorced at 55, moved to Oregon, started painting. She showed me pictures on her phone, these wild, colourful canvases that looked nothing like the careful, quiet woman I'd known. I asked her if she was happy. She said, "I'm myself," and that felt like a different answer entirely. I started painting too a few months later. Nothing serious, just watercolours at the kitchen table. I was terrible at it. My hands shake now. The colours bled into each other in ways I didn't intend. But there was something about it, something that felt like breathing after holding your breath underwater. I'd work on these clumsy little paintings, lose track of time completely, and when I finally looked up, the light had changed. Hours had passed, and I felt something I couldn't quite name. My granddaughter came to visit one afternoon and saw the paintings spread out on the table. She picked one up, this messy attempt at flowers, and she said, "Grandma, I didn't know you painted." And I said, "Neither did I." We sat there together, not talking, just looking at these strange little pieces of colour and water and paper. And then she asked me the same question her husband had asked her at her birthday. She said, "Are you happy?" I thought about it for a long time before I answered. I thought about Robert, the children, all those years of folding towels, making dinners, showing up, being good, being needed. I thought about the woman I'd been at 40, standing in that kitchen, with a question she was too afraid to ask. And I thought about who I am now, at 89, sitting at this table, with paint on my hands, and time I never thought I'd have. I told her the truth. I said, "I don't know if happy is the right word, but I think I'm finally learning what my life feels like when I'm inside it." She started crying, and I held her hand across the table with all those paintings between us. She didn't say anything, but I knew. I knew she was standing in her own kitchen, with her own question forming, the one she hasn't let herself ask yet, the one I couldn't ask for 50 years. Here's what I wish I'd asked myself at 40, the question that was waiting behind that locked door, the one that might have changed everything, or might have changed nothing, but at least would have let me know I was still there. Who am I when no one needs me to be anything? Not who am I supposed to be? Not who does everyone need me to be? Not what role am I filling? What purpose am I serving? How can I be good, useful, worth the space I take up? Just who am I underneath all of that? What do I want? What do I love? What makes me feel alive in a way that has nothing to do with being someone's wife, mother, daughter, or friend? I don't know what would have happened if I'd asked that question at 40 instead of 83. Maybe nothing would have changed. Maybe I would have been too afraid of the answer. Maybe the answer would have broken something I wasn't ready to break. But I wish I'd given myself the chance to find out. I wish I'd known that asking the question wasn't selfish. It was necessary, that you can love people completely and still need to know who you are when you're alone. I'm 89 now, and I'm just beginning to meet myself. I paint my clumsy paintings. I read my books. I take my long walks. I let myself want things without apologizing for the wanting. It feels both too late and exactly on time, which is maybe how these things always feel when you finally let them happen. My granddaughter is 40, and her question is forming. I can see it in her eyes when she thinks no one is watching. I hope she asks it sooner than I did. I hope she's braver than I was. But I also know it's her question to ask, in her own time, in her own way. All I can do is tell her that the question exists, that asking it doesn't make you selfish or ungrateful or wrong. It just makes you human, alive. and willing to know yourself before it's too late. I still don't have all the answers. I'm not sure anyone does. But I'm learning that the question itself is a kind of freedom. And that freedom is something you can find at any age, even 89, even after a lifetime of believing it wasn't meant for you. Sometimes I wonder who I might have been if I'd asked sooner. But mostly I'm just grateful I asked at all.